everybody. So welcome to Building Impactful Internal Collaborations, aka Find Your People. So in today's presentation, my colleagues and I from Ohio State University will help you to brainstorm ways to build your own intra-institution community. So we're going to be using our own group, the STEM Impact Collaborative, as a launching point to guide our discussion. If you haven't already, please download our digital worksheet that will help us in this process as we move through the presentation. Also, in a little bit, we are going to go in breakout rooms. So if you need to be in a specific breakout room with the captioner, please privately message Courtney Price, and she will make sure that you get into the correct breakout room. So who are we? Who is the STEM Impact Collaborative? Well, first off, my name is Cynthia. I've been talking, so I might as well introduce myself. My name is Cynthia Canan, and I am an outreach specialist in the College of Pharmacy at Ohio State. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Jason.
My name is Jason Cervenec. I'm the Education Outreach Director at the Byrd Polar and Climate Research Center, also at Ohio State. And we do broader impacts for about 14 different research teams and have a few of our own projects with education and outreach. Katherine?
Hey everyone, I'm Katherine. I am a postdoc at OSU Steam Factory, and a good chunk of my postdoc funds have come from an ASL project on convergent learning. And Courtney, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Price. I'm currently the research program manager for the Sustainability Institute at Ohio State. And I've been in informal education for about 20 years. So when I switched to a research development role, I was able to bring a pocket of my outreach with me, which is working with these fabulous people. And Wayne.
My name is Wayne Schlingman, and I work in the Department of Astronomy and teach and run the planetarium. So I'm the planetarium director. And so I do a lot of outreach, and working with these people has helped broaden that. And then last, we have Monica Delgado, who cannot be here. She's busy doing a lot of her own outreach programs at the moment. And so that's why she's a little bit of a floating head, but she is part of the STEM Impact Collaborative from the Department of Mathematics. All right, so if you want to get a hold of us or find out more about what we do beyond what we were talking about today, you can go to our website, u.osu.edu/STEMimpact, and there you can see some of our programs that are linked and our links to our YouTube page and our Facebook page. So if you want to get a hold of us, you can just go to that one link and check us out.
Okay. And we have our slides saved on the attendee hub. So if you didn't get those QR codes, you can grab them from the materials in our session. And I just wanted to go over our session goals today. We want to talk with you. We want to talk about finding collaborators and supporters within our own institutions and how to go about doing that, how to build a community of practice at the places where we all work. And then we'll finish up with some prep work for creating a personal action plan for how you can go about building your own community of practice at your institution. So we have one more icebreaker before we get started, and I'm super excited about this. And we're going to do what's called a chat waterfall, or some people call it a chat bomb. I'm not going to go to the screen yet. So we're going to ask you to type something into the chat, but please don't push enter until we count it down. So our chat waterfall is, what does ARIS stand for? But we want wrong answers only. So we're going to give you a moment to think of something witty that ARIS stands for, and then we'll count down and we'll all enter it into the chat at one time. All right, so hopefully you've thought of something amusing. You have it typed into your chat, and we're going to count down 3, 2, 1. So 3, 2, 1, enter. Your wrong answers only. Awesome rockstar impact superstars. I feel like we all should have that on our shirt. All the crazy impact peoples. Assuming research innovates somebody. This is great. Adopt really interesting skunks. Aren't they all interesting? Aardvarks, ranges in Sardinia. All right. I love this. Thank you for playing along. I'm going to save the chat so that we can humor our ARIS people after the fact on Twitter. But with that, I'm going to defer to our next section.
So a little bit of origin story to the group of people you see before you today. A number of us have worked together for years, even before we came to Ohio State. So Courtney Price and I originally worked together when I was at OSU and she was at COSI, which is the Science Center in Columbus, Ohio. Wayne arrived on campus and a few of us were loosely networked doing outreach work across campus. And in about late 2018, early 2019, those relationships started to gel a bit. We got more established programs and incubation of ideas. But what really drove things forward more was the pandemic. A lot of us were doing our own outreach programs. When the pandemic started, those were shut down. And within a few weeks, it became important to look to others for sounding boards, both for our own mental sanity, but figure out creative ways to replicate what other people were doing and bubble up ways to keep things going. And so in 2020, we started biweekly meetings that have continued to this point. There's no obligation to go to those. You know, people drop out here and there if they have another commitment, but the goal is it's a way every 2 weeks to check in and keep programs going on. We also had WestFest was started in 2015-16, which was kind of an ongoing event that happened once a year. That was a point of contact for a lot of us to get together. We'll talk more about that science festival today and the role it's played as serving as an anchor and also building capacity on campus. During the pandemic, our team was able to go ahead and deliver virtual programs the summer of that year for educators. We did a demand-driven educator check-in that we would have biweekly meetings that educators could drop in to ask questions and brainstorm ideas. And then in the last year and a half, we've really gotten a lot of support from the upper level administration, both funding initiatives like WestFest, but also our student interns. And we ended up winning an award, a high impact award for WestFest. So greater recognition, greater ability to scale across campus. So that's what our legacy is, and we've allowed us to build up over the last 6-7 years.
All right, so some of our activities that we've talked about, you've heard a little bit about WestFest. It's this big science and sustainability festival. We get a variety of campus researchers that want to do broader impacts as part of our program, as well as community partners, and they're all focused on interactive investigations of various things when we were in person, and last year and the year before we did everything virtually and still tried to drive that same interactive stuff, where we even created science kits for 500 different people that were given out at community centers and libraries across Central Ohio. Another one of our key things that we've been doing quarterly is called Guess Who. It's a game show where we showcase early career scientists and have community guessers learn about their science, sort of loosely based on a couple of different things, science game shows that we've seen online and Wait, Don't Tell Me, sort of that sort of vibe, but it's a lot of fun, and it highlights new people in the work that they're doing and gives us a great outreach opportunity to showcase a variety of different researchers that are not just in our own departments. We talked about those STEM education office hours. We have since retired that, as well as our interdisciplinary workshop for the time being, just because there's so much going on and people were so overloaded that they weren't being used at the time, but they're not things that, I mean, they definitely worked. We had people come in, asked a lot of questions, but read the room. When people are overwhelmed, we needed to pivot and put our energy into other places. And so that's one of the things that, like, in our group has done well, is sort of figure out where we need to be putting our energy, because there's only so much that we each have.
Okay, so we're going to do a little poll at this point. I know Courtney's going to go ahead and open up that poll, but you have two different ways to do it. I'm going to drop the link into here so you can go ahead and fill out the poll on Menti by going ahead and click on the link there. Or if you have your trusty phone, you can use the QR code on your screen by just holding your camera phone up, and it'll open up the page that's on that, connected to that QR code. If you could just take a second and fill out that survey in the next 90 seconds, and that'll prepare us for what we're going to do next.
Okay, final seconds to get your vote in.
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you've committed.
Okay, so we're closing voting. And are you seeing now that I've navigated back to the first screen? The first question? No, you're not, because I'm not sharing my screen. Haha. Okay, so
You're good now.
great. So here's our responses. You can see on the first one, how much does connecting with ARIS impact your work? We're pretty high up on the sliding scale. It's the wind beneath my wings. And then let's go on to the next one. Jason, I'll let you take back over.
And this is, to what extent have you, the sort of network within your home institution? Are you somebody who operates by yourself, or do you connect with a lot of other people like the network we have here? And it seems like we have almost a normal distribution with a few more people that operate as lone wolves here. So you might be one of the few or only person doing this work at your institution. Okay, it looks like we're ready for a little time to people to write and prepare for our next step.
Yeah, so before we send you into your breakout rooms, we want to give you a little bit of time to think, especially for you lone wolves out there. So we're going to set aside 90 seconds for you to do a little bit of writing to get you prepared for what we're going to be talking about in our great breakout rooms. So we have a couple of questions up on the screen. Feel free to jot down notes, do whatever you need. I'm going to start a 90-second timer. And then when that goes off, we'll send you out into your breakout rooms for more conversations. Okay, go.
All right, Jason, I think we may have everyone back now. So take it away for the report out.
Okay, so the way the report out is going to work is we're going to have each room give a report out for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes max, and then we're going to ask other groups to interject for about 15 to 20 seconds, anything that wasn't mentioned in that category that was brought up. So we're going to start out with group one, whoever's been assigned to be the report out person. If you'd like to start out with the first question and what's the ideal situation, give us what your team talked about.
Does one of our group members want to do that? We did not decide who is reporting back.
I know we had so much good conversation. It was like the last thing we were doing is the Zoom room closed.
Okay, if not, I can do our thing. So we were thinking that in a perfect situation, having a dedicated office or dedicated person for broader impacts research, enough people to do the work, having either a team of experts that you can access. So like somebody who is like an expert in evaluation and an expert in other aspects of BI. So it wasn't just an army of one. And then sort of using that to unify and grow what people were even thinking about and to get more money for broader impacts and research in general.
Okay, group two, is there anything you'd like to add to that, the ideal situation?
Beth, I'm gonna volunteer you to be a report out.
Okay, darn. I think we could add that Jackie's has an outreach team, and Cynthia, you'd mentioned that's kind of your role too, where you have a long-term vision and getting everybody on board and building towards that vision, whether it's by department or for the entire university. So an outreach team. And I don't believe we necessarily have an outreach specialist, though I am cheating because Megan Heitman is Iowa State's specialist, even though it's very teeny tiny percentage of her daily duties. So did I forget anything?
Okay, for my group three, Jessica's going to give any additions we have.
An endless supply of money. That's what we all want, right? So sufficient funding to accomplish goals and sustain the work, and that the research impacts are acknowledged and celebrated throughout the university and with our executive leadership.
And group four, anything to add to the ideal situation?
We talked about seeing beyond the NSF frameworks of broader impacts and bringing together people who support impact in all capacities.
So very much in line with that co-generation idea of co-generation of knowledge and outreach. Okay, next question is the current situation, the current state of affairs. So we'll start out with group two for this. If you can give us a quick report out, and then we'll have each of the groups add anything else that wasn't mentioned.
So I'll go ahead and Beth, I won't put you on the spot again, and just talk about our current situation. So in our group, most of us were in the beginning stages of this development, and we're really still trying to figure out the challenges that we're seeing. There's a lot of roadblocks that we're coming up against, and really trying to figure out where all the challenges are. One of our participants mentioned that there's a disconnect between outreach specialists and the researchers, and they have different visions and different goals. So then how do we gel those? So all that just to say is we're all really in the beginning stages of building this perfect situation. So I guess we're really far away.
For group 3, my group, Cheryl, can you give us any additions?
Yeah, I was looking over ours and realized they're kind of all related around the point that the staffing, so like we don't know each other, there's a lot of turnover, and there's no clear advancement trajectory.
Thank you. A group 4, current state of affairs, any additions?
I don't think there was much that the other groups didn't say, kind of lack of coordination and maybe work that others are doing in the impact space not being respected as much as it should.
In group 1.
Lisa, did you want to go? If not, the only thing that we, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of our groups has an institution where they have a BI team that is actually starting, that might actually be the beginnings of the ideal situation. So that was kind of cool to like be on the starting of that sort of thing. Otherwise, having small institutions and realizing that when you come from large institutions, they don't have as many people or financial support in order to get these same types of impacts off the ground.
Okay.
And
Question?
I was just going to
Go
say
ahead.
that I have, I think the ARIS program is going to be a huge step, at least for my institution. And I know that I think it was on day 1 or day 2 when they were talking about maybe the professional certifications that are similar to the ORIC program. I think that could potentially help institutions get to their ideal state.
Thank you for that addition. For question number 3, we'll start out with group 3, bridging the gap. How do we get from where we are to where we want to be to this vision? Megan, could you kick off with our summary?
Sure. We talked about from a staffing point of view, really kind of getting HR involved or figuring out where a trajectory could be for those who are doing this type of work. And kind of a BI support area, there's not a lot of, additional steps to move higher on the ladder, right? The other thing we talked about was really coordinating efforts. We happen to all be at land-grant universities, so but coordinating efforts with the extension offices and the extension programs, because they do a very good job of reaching out to all the counties within the states, and but there's sometimes a disconnect with the faculty on campus. So we thought of those two as things bridging the gap. I think ORIC would be an amazing thing. We just started yesterday, had our first meeting with the 9 new institutions. So I agree that would also help bridge any gaps.
Group 4, any additions?
Well, we couldn't agree more on the need for more staff and more coordination, and the land grant conversation came up in our room too. I think just more, we talked about more staffing at every level. So more centralized staff who could help coordinate, and more staff or staff time across units to do kind of the grassroots engagement efforts with the community and other stakeholders.
Any additions from group 1?
We had quite a bit of discussion in addition to the support and funding was working on team mentality. So going from lone wolves that are used to having to sort of do their own thing to trusting other people to do their own part of the work for like working as a team.
And any last comments? I think group 2, last group on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what Wayne said with like the group work. We mentioned how, and like I said before, some of the researchers don't understand how a well-oiled machine, to steal Jackie's phrase, the outreach specialist might already be operating, and they want to do things themselves, and vice versa. The outreach team don't really want to understand the broader impact. So there's some disconnect that we need to figure out to have a symbiotic relationship between outreach and researchers.
Before we go into question 3, maybe I should ask really quick, Courtney, do we need to give a summary real quick, like 30 seconds, what ORIC is for anybody who doesn't know, or if anybody could raise their hand if you're not familiar with that, because I don't want to be dropping an acronym here and not explaining it.
Well, Megan is the expert, but I will do my best to remember what the acronym is. It is ARIS's program to enhance organizational research impacts capacity. And so it's a train the trainer model where institutions apply, and you have an RI professional and an administrative partner from each institution that's selected, and you go through an intensive training process with the ARIS team, and then it's a year-long cohort, and the goal is that at the end of this experience, your institution comes out with more infrastructure in place to support the work from the institutional level. Ohio State just wrapped up their year in cohort 1, so it sounded like we had at least one institution entering into cohort 2, so congratulations.
And our last question, we'll start out with group 4 with the reality check. What on the list seems feasible? And I'm going to just parse out by saying that our group didn't actually get to this question. We had so much good conversation, but there's the risk that I want to tell every group, no, you're not being judged if you didn't get to it or don't have a lot to add, because I know we had limited time. So anything to start with group 4?
Well, I'll actually defer to Katherine because I think she was making a really interesting point, because we also barely got to this one before we got cut short.
Yeah, no, this was hard to get to, but what we were talking about was some of the tension between having the grassroots that really has helped a lot of universities be successful at this, and balancing that with the issue of like getting administrators on board to give more staffing, but not just dumping staff on and kind of erasing some of what people have built up on their own time.
Group 1, any additions?
Nope.
Group 2?
We didn't get there, but I'm going to open it for Beth or Jackie if you guys want to jump in, if you have any, based on what we talked about, if you felt like anything was feasible.
I think that we could start towards building awareness and towards a culture with little funds, but without resources, it's really tough. And someone already mentioned the environment where there've been so many transitions, etc. But with minimal funds, I think we could build some awareness around broader impacts and the opportunities and the value.
Any addition from my group, Jessica, Cheryl, or Megan? Okay, we didn't get to this one, so.
Okay.
Wonderful conversation though.
I would add, I think it's feasible to build from our current networks that may be working, and as others have talked about, building from that grassroots. So yeah, build on what's working now.
Okay, thank you for everybody's contributions. Pass the torch to
me.
Yes.
All right, so we wanted to touch on some of our challenges, but as I'm reflecting on our conversation, it's evident that we see these groups differently. Some of us are within a department, within a unit. Some of us, like our group, it's actually intra-institution. So we all hail from different units. So it was really interesting to think about what groups might look like for you, and it might be different than what we have here. But for us, we've been kind of holding up our group, kind of like what a successful or what a good working group might look like. But it's also important for us to point out that we have and we continue to experience challenges. So we're not definitely by any means like the gold standard you should all aspire to, because we're not there. We're still learning as we go, and we're just having a lot of fun with each other. But some of these challenges have been exciting. They've been good. We're in the process of onboarding new members. So, what does that process look like? Our group has been successful just because of our dynamic and our working relationship. And to be able to or think about adding new members, what is that process? How do we make sure that our vision or their vision aligns with ours and that we will work well together? And, we have so many good visions. We have so many good ideas. But at the same time, we have so little time. So like, how do we decide where we move to and where we go? And while some challenges are good, some challenges have definitely been really frustrating. For some of us, we're limited by our department's expectations of time, and our involvement in this group is limited by almost our unit or division's sometimes narrow vision of the purpose and importance of broader impact. And I know that this was mentioned in my group, and as I heard in the report out about not understanding this culture and the long-term impact of broader impact, and so we're limited by what we can do because there's not a culture of recognition. And I think that also links really well to kind of our program discussion or our program description, saying that having these BI conversations with different people might be really frustrating. But what's really great about our group is we can talk about our frustrations with each other. And that's some of the meaningful things I've been able to take away from my group as well. And although we face challenges as a part of this group, and as well as individual practitioners, either in BI or outreach, being a part of this group means that we don't have to face any of these challenges alone. So Courtney, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. So really the question is like, how do you move forward? How do you find your own people? And if you want to navigate, if you have the worksheet pulled up, if you want to go to the second page of that worksheet, I just have some directed questions for you to reflect on as you think about building your own or finding your own people. So, the first one is really to think about the vision for this support group. What does it mean to have this support group for you? And how can this group support your own work? But we also have to think about how we can support the work of others in this group. It's not just this group is going to support me and do what I want. How do we work together to support each other? So you really need that to be in your vision to be a successful working group. And so how do you identify then, once you have your vision, how do you identify these potential group members? And for some of you, maybe you've already worked with outreach specialists or broader impact specialist practitioners in your institution. And so you can brainstorm about like, who are the people you can trust to get things done? Who are people you worked with that you liked working with? Who are people you didn't like working with maybe? But on the other hand, if you've not worked with anybody in your community, who can you talk to about your BI dreams to help you find your people? So that was my entry point into this group. I actually wasn't connected to this group or anybody on this group at all, but I just kept sharing my passion for broader impact work. And from talking to people that I knew who cared about me and wanted me to help progress moving my career, they were able to connect me with this group. So if you don't know anybody in your institution, that's okay. Take it one step at a time. And then we move on to how you grow your team and what do you think the outputs are for this team? You know, do you want to grow it in a grassroots initiative or with leadership buy-in? And who are your allies in leadership? And what activities do you guys want to take on together and help each other with? And lastly, it's important to think about your metric for success. You know, what is our end goal for our group? And how do we work together to meet that successful goal? All right.
I don't know that we assigned anyone to wrap this up, did we?
We didn't.
No,
No.
I can try and put a bow on it then. I've been kind of quiet. So hopefully you guys found this process and this conversation that we had today helpful and inspiring. Our goal really was to leave you with a tool that you could reflect on in your own time, so that whether it's now or a month from now, when you have the capacity to look at the worksheet and you can start thinking about what works for you and what's going to fill some of the needs that you and your institution has. So we all on our group welcome folks reaching out to us. So our contact information is available here. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you want to, but we do have a few minutes left. We can either give you 5 minutes of your life back today, or if anyone has questions or discussion points that came up throughout the session, we'd be happy to stay and just kind of informally chat as well.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So in our group, you know, we talked a lot about the lone wolf versus the team. And where I am, it's not, we don't have an organized team, but I definitely team with other people doing similar things. That said, we do have some kind of territorial boundaries maybe. And also a lot of us are 100% grant funded. So there's a little bit of competition in terms of funding our salaries. Have you guys had to deal with that? And do you have any recommendations on how to navigate those areas?
A lot, I guess at Ohio State, we're big enough. We don't compete, a lot of us, for funding. There's surprisingly not a lot of overlap. There's maybe some of that in other departments or other work that I have. I kind of defer to the team science book that NIH put out. And I think early in my career, I was really hesitant to this with so many things with my grants, even budgets, is to put all the cards on the table and say, like, I need to know to work with you what our relationship's going to be. And what is a good working relationship? Is it, you know, this is the divide of content, or how are we going to work together? And just say, spend more time deliberately having those conversations up front, because inevitably it's much better to have them then than after funding comes in. We've always found ourselves to be a group of worker bees and getting a lot of things done and knowing the practical side. But I just try to defer now, more communication, more open, honest discussions best.
And that was the team science.
I'll put a link in there. There's a really nice handbook, and I always like to look at this handbook every now and then. It's just, I feel like it always nudges me that things I forget to do as I get into partnership going that I should be doing. And they just stress, you know, communication, sometimes writing it down. And it's been so good for our new PIs to do this, because they're where I was 10 years ago. And it avoids some of the miscommunication steps that can make it for a really awkward relationship for 3 years of funding if you don't have them.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
One thing I would throw onto that, in reference to the point of territory, we've been lucky within our group that I feel like we are pretty agnostic, isn't the right word, but like none of us are trying to stake our claim in the world through our programming. But one thing I think we're starting to face is we're seeing success in what we're doing, but we're grassroots, right? We don't have pull within the institution, so to speak. And as people are seeing our success, they're wanting to piggyback on or recreate some of the things that we're doing in such a way that might just to say it in marketing terms, it might take away from our brand. And
Yeah.
so the grassroots nature of our group, we're really having to make sure that we're advocating for ourselves very clearly and strongly and professionally. But that's a new challenge that we're facing right now.
And I feel like we have a little bit of that going on.
Mhm.
Once they see something that worked really well, they're like, oh, well, we can do something similar to that. And maybe they want to include us, but we are a small number of people and for the number of researchers, and we can't implement everything. So do you just let them copy? Or, how do you solve that?
This could be a conversation for next year's summit, but we're not going quietly into the night. We are inviting collaboration, but we want to keep our model.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to play in the sandbox while not losing the model that we've built over the past few years.
Awesome.
And we are currently navigating this like at the moment and being proactive about it and sort of steering the conversation before they already have plans. And then it's like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? Is sort of helping to stave off major changes or dilution.
And can I assume that all these insights you can be sharing with the incoming cohort of ORIC people who
Feel free to reach out.
help us as we navigate these same waters?
Definitely.
I think we've had to find out, and it's good, there's a number of us we've had different life experiences to build on, but finding your professional voice. And we've had a few times recently, we've had to say, you can do that, but here are the hazards we see as people that have run large events like this. And we're concerned you're going to replicate that because you haven't given yourself sufficient time to implement this in the scope you envision, and you're not going to get the results.
Mm-hmm.
And asking them to, articulate their goals, because I think we've seen there was a disconnect between their goal and their tactic, and telling them like, that's not going to get you there. Your audience, there's a disconnect, and helping them realize that. Actually, sometimes making them articulate it makes them self-realize that there's a disconnect.
Right.
Thank you all for participating in the process and having conversations. I know sometimes breakout groups aren't really what you're in the mood for, but I think that y'all seem to have really great conversations when you report it out.